When I take 2 minutes to bitch about the annoyances of having multiple sclerosis, I insist I can't be repetitive. I must whine and complain with new words. How many words do we have for describing symptoms like pain? Well, not enough. Sharp, dull, achy, daily, itchy, radiating, nauseating, disabling, annoying. Greenland has 46 words for snow. No wonder. Profound knowledge about something leads to more words being needed and created. The better we can describe ourselves to ourselves, the deeper we understand our nuances. More accurate and specific descriptions lead to better communication of our symptoms, moods, and circumstances with our health team. Then, together we can make informed decisions, plan, and adjust. Believe it or not, this rant about words leads us to today's episode on coffee. Welcome to my new hat, Coffee Snob. Our guest is Jennifer Stone, my colleague in my Thursday morning mastermind group for solo entrepreneurs. Jen is the host of the Coffee Explorer podcast, a quality lecturer and licensed curator by the Coffee Quality Institute. She is internationally recognized as an expert coffee taster and judge for the Cup of Excellence. She has expertise in finding, sourcing, and sharing remarkable coffees from quality global producers. Over her career, she's opened multiple cafes and created several direct consumer and business-to-business specialty coffee brands. She provided expertise to others in these areas and is always excited to share the best ways to brew coffee with the market. Jen has opened my eyes in unexpected ways. Drink up. Welcome to Health Hats, the podcast. I'm Danny Van Leeuwen, a two-legged, cisgender, old white man of privilege who knows a little bit about a lot of healthcare and a lot about very little. You'll listen and learn about what it takes to adjust to life's realities in the awesome circus of healthcare. Let's make some sense of all of this. Thank you. Jen Stone, how the heck are you?
I'm great, Danny. Thank you.
Great to see you.
Really good.
I'm excited to do this. You've really opened up a whole array of senses for me. We met over a business, really, just working together on our businesses and, how that's growing and managing. But what I've learned from you is about coffee. And not just about coffee, it's about, more about the sense of taste. Because it's not just, while I'm learning to appreciate fine coffee and concentrating more on what's happening in my mouth, it's also, I'm finding it with food and chocolate and alcohol and just more awareness. So, when did you first realize health was fragile?
Okay. So this is such an interesting question, and I love that you asked it, because it's the word health is fragile and not the word life is fragile. Because I think, when a loved one passes or has a near, possible near death experience, that speaks to how you're, invigorated about life. But health specifically is a little more vague. And actually, what I was saying is that recently, Okay, around 2 Novembers ago. Time has really lost meaning since, like, 2020, but about a year and a I'm gonna say a year and a half ago, just for running. I really love to run, not that I'm fast. I love to jog and exercise, but it just kind of, like, wore down on, like, one of my knee joints. I have technically some arthritis in one of my knees, and it just felt like this bone-on-bone thing, and it was really disabling, and it just after a few days of it just not going away, no matter how much ibuprofen I took, I realized, like, I need my knee to be strong. I don't wanna be focused on my knee. I've got a I had a dog who needed to run outside quickly from time to time, and I just need to be able to take care of my family, go to the grocery. My job very much requires me, like, scurrying through airports and making presentations and standing and walking, and I was just like, "This." And I say this, and it's a completely privileged framework, but I'm always been ridiculously healthy. Thank God, literally, I have had my health, and so I'm real sensitive to anything glitchy, and it was really frustrating, and I realized, like, that little thing could really have an impact on my life, much less something larger.
How does coffee fit into that? One of the things that I know about health is that profound understanding of something is helpful. You're talking about your knee and you're running, and the more you understand what's happening there, the more a person, I think, is able to then manage their health. What experts do, and you're a coffee
Mm.
expert, is you an expert, coffee expert, you understand profoundly the coffee process. Is there like a health piece to that that people, the only thing I ever hear about coffee and health is it's got caffeine, and people say dark coffee doesn't really have more caffeine. Does decaffeinated coffee really have less caffeine? So is that part of your expertise?
So I keep a high level awareness of that because I think just like with any industry, health or anything culinary, like the next you're it's very whimsical and you're only as informed as the next article that comes out about coffee and health or cheese or butter or how much walking you should do versus how many weights you should do and those sorts of things. So I'll say I keep an awareness of it. I definitely have some thoughts about coffee and health. And the net is we have to distinguish, are we talking about caffeine or are we talking about coffee? And I think we should talk about coffee
Okay.
because it is a caffeine delivery, a very effective caffeine delivery system. And and again, everything in moderation, even running. And and so I think knowing, everybody kind of probably has a loose awareness of their caffeine limits or coffee limits. And so, we can push those from time to time, but keeping everything in moderation. You know, technically brewed coffee, it's a plant, it's a fruit. Coffee is a fruit, and it is a seed of a fruit. And so it is truly full of antioxidants. I'm not going to list them, but it's full of things that aren't good for you because we're sipping it generally kind of slowly over maybe a 20-30 minute framework. The delivery system is effective, especially with drip coffee. And so I say two things about that. One is that it is a good cup of coffee. And so you and I have talked about this, like that moment that happens, the time slowing. I love that I even wrote it down, that sense of taste can transmutate over to sense of place and just, that moment of drinking or brewing a really nice cup of coffee. Be it, uncaffeinated, decaffeinated or otherwise. Good coffee brewed well is, kind of the starting point for that experience. And then things like cream and sugar, coffee becomes a delivery system for all those additives as well. And so that's where, a choice, like you were saying, has to come in. Is this the way I'm going to have sugar today? Milk, now we're adding kind of unflavored collagen to coffee. So there's just really no
Wait a minute, say that again.
limit.
When you said collagen, that like caught my attention. So say
Yeah.
that again.
So, there's, for example, vital proteins is this collagen, that peptides that are just extremely dissolvable and amazingly don't taste like anything. So people are putting that in their
Oh,
coffee,
in their
their
coffee.
water, their
Okay,
yogurt.
okay. You're talking about
It's
additives.
undetectable.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah. So there are a range of things that people add to their coffee that, may or may not contribute to their health.
So another thing that has interested me that I've been learning about is that you tend to work with specific growers and roasters and vendors. And how do you go about choosing them? Like, yeah, the whole process is
That's a
just
great question.
so interesting.
Yeah.
Clearly, you're not looking at instant coffee. You do all this work for us to
Yeah.
find. Anyway, so
Too.
why? How? What's that about?
Yeah. So that is such a great question. So over the years, I've developed my expertise, my experience in coffee, and people tell me I am a good cupper, which means I'm a good person who tastes coffee, assessing coffee quality, and I have a designation by the Coffee Quality Institute as a person who is a quality grader. And so there's a framework for tasting coffee that is a international language, a common language for assessing the coffee quality that a small group of us are able to do. And so I use that framework of like, it's a point system. Does this coffee score high on acidity, brightness, flavor, aftertaste, those sorts of things. Also, we want to eliminate things that it could have like negative attributes, like is it sour or does it taste like a band-aid? So having said that, when I'm thinking about a coffee, burnt, yes. When I'm thinking about a coffee, I'm looking for kind of this harmonious flavor and complexity. I love when I can taste in the coffee, is it, a chocolate note, a milk chocolate note specifically, maybe pumpkin spice, a baking spice. And when I can detect a few different flavor notes that I think that you could detect too, anyone who enjoys drinking coffee, then I think that is a coffee that most people are going to want to at least taste and try. And so that's what I'm looking for. And then with my, years of network and relationships and new things are happening in coffee all the time, I seek those coffees out from producers. I find out what they're doing at the farm to make their coffees taste so good. And that it's research.
I now have one URL for all things health hats. That's linktree/health hats, spelled linktr.ee/health hats, one word, to subscribe for free or with a contribution through Patreon. You can access show notes, search the 600 plus episode archive, and link to my social media channels. Your engagement by listening, sharing, and commenting makes quite an impact. Please visit linktree/health hats. Thank you. You're talking about flavor.
Yeah.
And so you know what that made me do is it made me go get the coffee that I'm drinking right now, and I have the cup. And I'm thinking about, what does this say on here? Taste of watermelon candy, tropical tea, strawberry. anaerobic fermentation natural process. This is the
Yes.
relevant reserve coffee. Columbia Adrian Lasso Pink Bourbon. It's amazing. Anyway,
You love it?
I do. It's intriguing. And it's not something
Yes.
that I'm going to drink like routinely. You know, I feel like it's something like, okay, I got it today. I'm drinking it now because I knew I was going to be on the phone with you. But it's a coffee that makes you want to, like, I was going to say think, but it's not so much think, it's taste. You know, like, okay, what is this? Like, I don't know. I never read the watermelon candy tropical tea strawberry. And I'm always amazed. Like, how does that, like, where does that come from?
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, we have the advantage in the lovely vacuum of what we call the cupping table, tasting that coffee in a very, quiet, controlled atmosphere with our worksheets in front of us. We are very specifically looking to find those flavors of, the acids, the fruits. We seek out fruits, and we, are looking for the level of body or the mouthfeel. So again, in that vacuum, we can say words like watermelon candy. And I was again my notes. I had well, I definitely like hit it out of the park with those sweet fruity notes. I found things like peppercorn, and I found it to be like very creamy and buttery in terms of like the texture. And so like with wine tasting, you kind of have to train your mind to think about these specific notes, but it's part of the adventure, right?
It's
And
like
and like you said,
music.
it didn't even
It's
occur
like
to you.
music.
Ooh, yes, it is. It
Yeah.
is. So, and this coffee, like you just said, it's not something you want to drink every day. It's not something I even want to drink every day. But I love that so much artwork went into producing this coffee by Adrian Lasso. It was a very controlled experiment that had a lot of beans he had to discard, if you will, because of what the controlled fermentation you have to do to make a coffee taste this good and sweet. Otherwise, it could taste really bad, really bad. So yeah, I think it's an art form. But again, I don't want every coffee to be like this, and it's not a gateway coffee. I gave some to my mother who doesn't drink a ton of coffee. She likes it. She doesn't do caffeine, and she just didn't like it. In fact, we have a friend in common. I sent him a similar coffee, Seth Godin, and he roasts coffee. So I gave him some green coffee that had a similar process, and he roasted it, and he didn't love it at all. I mean, even the smell is very like peaty. So, and I think that's okay, and it opened my eyes because even though it's the highest quality coffee and maybe it scores like a 98, it doesn't mean that you'll like it, even if someone else says it's the best.
Wow.
It doesn't have much to do with health.
Well, there's too many places I can go from here. Okay, so what does fermentation have to do with making coffee?
Aha. So,
This
like I was
isn't
saying,
like
coffee is a
liquor.
fruit. It's There's definitely some crossovers happening in terms of making the coffee taste a certain way. And so again, as a fruit, coffee cherries, that's what we call them. They look like kind of like a cranberry, except they've got these two seeds in the middle that are facing each other like this. So to remove that cherry from those seeds is where there used to just basically be two ways. And now there's a range of ways that we can remove that cherry, ferment some of that pulp on the seed and impart those pulpy flavors to the bean in a great way. People are even adding, like for example, cinnamon to that moment when the coffee cherry is having to be fermented or washed off. And that is causing the coffee bean to be flavored versus, like flavoring agents that are added after the coffee is roasted.
Oh, so people
So,
add stuff after. Okay.
yeah, that's if you love it, you love it. I don't judge, but it's not an amazing way to have a really high quality coffee. But if you enjoy the taste of it, at Christmas, then go ahead.
Looking at a label, how would you know whether the watermelon whatever came from the bean itself or was like, somebody added a drop of watermelon flavor to it?
That is a good question. And I think roasters today have become more transparent about saying, we did this at the farm, and so it tastes like watermelon, versus the high quality roasters they're not going to use the flavoring agents because they are pretty harsh, like polypropylene glycol, like, you know, just powders and things that you would add after roast to kind of create that snickerdoodle kind of coffee.
Okay, okay, okay.
Um, Very different.
I'm going to shift a little bit because one of the things that I found interesting, especially after I went to Costa Rica and went to a coffee farm, and then I came back from that and I was full of questions about, like, it seems like any of this luxury good products, that it's usually the people at the beginning kind of get screwed in the process. Like something is high end and there's a lot
Mhm.
of charge, and it's like people are making the money who really didn't do the work. And I remember you talking a little bit about how when you go around and when you travel and go to farms that you're selective about how you select the farms you want to work with. So is there a part about it that's, I don't even know what to call it, sort of social justice piece of this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's as fine a word as any, because coffee is just very technically, I'll just say a third world product. It's generally, grown in this, band near the equator, but it encompasses, countries like Honduras or El Salvador that are really struggling, but, also like Brazil, Colombia, Indonesia, Sumatra, and then, Africa. Maybe Kenya is a third world, but, countries like Ethiopia, Tanzania, they're places where, producing this pennies for a pound of product has been highly leveraged to stay down like that. So when I work with individual farmers who, you know, have had some sort of opportunity to get their coffees on the map, and it could be through different programs like Cup of Excellence holds auctions in countries anybody could submit, and people like me come in, people who are in country come in and taste their coffees and recognize either their potential or how good they already are. It allows producers and importers to come in and pay more for those coffees because they want them more. Uh,
On my end of it, what I see is that, coffee isn't cheap. And you go to Starbucks and it's like this really expensive cup of coffee, which I have no idea, what's happening. But I feel like
mhm,
when, I built a relationship with you where you're curating the coffee for me. And
mhm.
I have this sense that you're paying attention to the whole process. And I guess right now what I'm interested in is what you pay attention to with the farmers. That must be the beginning. I mean, the beginning is growing the
Yeah.
bean. And so, like, what are you looking for? Because like your coffee is expensive, but it's not outrageous by any means. there is way
Mm.
more expensive coffee out there. I mean, sometimes like you
Yeah.
sent me that Rwanda coffee, which was a little more expensive, and it was like worth it. But anyway, so is the farmer getting more of that?
Huh. Yeah. So what I have discovered a correlation between like these higher quality, better tasting, hitting my all the top end of the marks on the cupping sheet. Those farmers tend to take better care. They have to take better care of their farms, but also of the people who work there. It just kind of goes hand in hand. The farmers, often provide housing. A lot of times coffee pickers are just like in the US kind of transient and they'll move from farm to farm during harvest. They can receive housing, they can have school and healthcare and um, uh, different aspects of their life are improved because they are in coffee. And so, that farmer does have to charge more
Yeah.
for their beans. And the market can depress what they can charge, but we've come into an era where we can pay, as fairly as needed for that farmer to have that coffee again next year, which is really we're really starting to think about the sustainability of
Right, right. Being able to
great coffee.
predict your market.
Yeah,
Right.
year after year.
Okay. I think I'm going to do one more thing. So I want to talk to you about like taste. Okay, so what I've learned from you in coffee, like in my exploration of coffee over the past few years, is that, and I feel like I know enough to be dangerous now, but I can just like share. So, you know, I already knew what aftertaste was, right? Like how long do you taste something? And but like sort of having this image in my mind of my tongue and my, I don't know what it's called. What's a palate, by the way?
Yeah, your tongue is the entire tongue that
And
that
then it's
take.
the tongue and the top, the roof of your mouth, because it seems to me I can still. It's been a while since I had a sip, and I can still taste it. And I taste it mostly on the roof of my mouth and a little bit on the middle of my tongue. It is interesting because it's the rare coffee that I taste on the back of my tongue. And when I do, I find that interesting, just because it's
Yeah.
different. And there are coffees that you've given me that they're a burst, and there's a burst and then
Mhm.
it's like pow, as opposed
Yeah.
to, I don't know. I don't know.
It is like music,
It
right?
is. It is. It is. Um, And that's just so interesting to me because, again, now, like I said, cheese. I'm not much of a wine drinker, but I do like whiskey, and I don't often like slow down and taste,
Right.
but I have been more with coffee. And one of the things that's been good is my dog really likes to sit out on the porch in the morning and sit on my lap and we sort of watch whatever it is going on with a cup of coffee, and so I'm like sitting there with the dog, and I can take the time.
Yes.
I'm not like multitasking with my coffee.
Yes. I love that. And I think that is such an interesting idea of literally experiencing the coffee aftertaste finish in physiologically, like where in your mouth you're tasting it versus like what is it that you're tasting? Is it sour or bitter or chocolatey or sweet? I think that that takes that sensory experience to another level that I don't hear very often. So I
Mhm.
think that's very insightful of you to really think of it that way. That's quite interesting.
So,
Really kind of dial. Oh,
I want to just I want to wrap up. And
okay.
I think that here's the things that when I think about, so my focus is on health. And I feel like what I'm enjoying about this experience starts with this feeling like I understand how it's grown and about the workers who are doing it and, less exploitation of third world. Like, I don't like feeling like I'm taking advantage of people that like
Sure.
in my, what I consume, which mostly I don't know. But I feel like in this I do, which is nice. And I also like the bit about stopping for 5 seconds and tasting this cup of coffee, tasting this mouthful
Mhm.
of coffee. There's something, it's like a sigh, right? It's like, okay, I'm just gonna sit here for a second, and I don't have to like think about what I gotta do next and whatever it is I'm puzzling over, but I can just
Mhm.
appreciate and relax with this taste.
Mhm.
So I feel like we could do this once a year because it's such a journey. I mean, I can't believe how much I feel like I know. Well, in a way, you've ruined me, to tell you the truth. Like, I can't go to Starbucks anymore. Like, I just don't like it. It's too strong. It's like there's
Mhm.
no, I don't know, whatever. But I feel like I'm more discerning, and when I'm away, I try to bring coffee with me, but
Mhm.
it's and I because I just love the routine of, I just have a habit of drinking coffee. But, then I drink and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm disappointed. Like, oh my God, that was nothing. Or, oh my God, that was burnt. Or that was, that
Yes.
was like
That's frustrating.
nothing. I can't identify anything. And I'm so disappointed. So I'll thank you for that.
Well, I do wanna ask you one question, and we spoke several months ago, and you were looking for a coffee grinder, so I sent
Yes.
you all these, links, like, "Try this one," and you surprised
Yeah.
me with the grinder that you purchased, but tell me again your experience with that grinder
All
now.
right. I'll put something in the show notes about it, but it's a small metal, like, yeah, cast iron, I think, a grinder that's a 1 cup grinder that you can adjust the how fine the grind is. The design of it is amazing. I'm like, I pay a lot of attention to design in healthcare. And so I'm very attuned to that. And it's really easy to crank. It it I feel like it'll last forever. The handle folds down. You put it away. We have a very small kitchen. It doesn't take,
Mhm.
has doesn't it's a small footprint. And yeah, so it's, before that, I used to use this electric grinder and it was like one grind. I remember talking to you
Mhm.
about it when I was starting to,
Yeah, the blade grinder.
yeah, it was a blade grind, electric blade grinder.
Mhm.
And you suggested, well, you pointed me to a company and a grinder. And yes, I picked something
Mhm.
different than you suggested because it was smaller. And
Mhm.
yeah, whatever.
Well, I think you're hand grinding your coffee, which is, people do when they're camping or traveling, but I love that you shared with me you now enjoy the experience of grinding coffee, even
Yeah.
though it takes longer than 30 seconds. It's
No, it
part
doesn't.
of
It
your
doesn't really. It doesn't take
Yeah,
longer.
okay.
It doesn't.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
it's
you
way
enjoy it.
better. And then I could adjust the grind. My style of trying stuff is overshoot the mark and then back up. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like,
I do.
and
Yes.
so, this was really easy to do that, to just adjust, and it holds whatever it is I say. And now, I don't do
Yeah.
anything because I like how it is.
Mhm.
Yeah, it makes it, makes my experience of it. That's what I feel
Yeah.
like. It's just this whole experience.
So not only does fresh ground coffee, taste better, and that's what we always talk about, but it's like enhanced your hand grinding has enhanced your coffee drinking
Mhm.
experience overall. Mm.
Thanks. This is great.
Thank you.
Coffee, notes, music. A logical progression. I've played music for the last 40 years. I'm just beginning to quiet my mind and let the music flow over me, not as background, but hearing, tasting, notes, pitches, dynamics, location of sensation, emotion, individual instruments, sections, coherence, and cacophony. I could go on. I love learning, be it music, podcasting, or coffee. I get high on the image of new pathways snaking across and around the Swiss cheese of my MS brain. Coffee, notes, music. I host, write, and produce Health Hats the podcast with assistance from Kayla Nelson and Leon and Oscar Van Leeuwen. Music from Joey Van Leeuwen. I play Barry sax on some episodes alone or with the Lechuga Fresca Latin Band. I buy my hats at Selma Gundy, Boston, and my coffee from the Jennifer Stone Collective. Links in the show notes. I'm grateful to you who have the critical roles as listeners, readers, and watchers. Subscribe and contribute. If you like it, share it. See you around the block.